I never had a close relationship with Sarah, my older half-sister. She was born out of my dad's earlier marriage, so by the time I came into the picture, she was already a teenager. We didn't argue or fight, we simply never spent time together. I was just starting kindergarten when she moved out, and she wasn't thrilled about having a younger brother. I barely saw her as I got older, meeting only occasionally during holiday get-togethers or in the once-in-a-blue-moon visits, but we were on good terms. So when the cops called us a few days ago to let us know they found her body, I was devastated. Some neighbors apparently called 911 when they heard screams and saw smoke coming out of the house. After the firefighter put out a fire in the basement, they found some charred remains that they assumed were hers. They couldn't identify her given the body's state, but all of the evidence pointed towards an accident. She didn't have a husband or kids, so the duty of burying her fell on us. The funeral was what you'd expect under such circumstances. Lots of crying and mourning around a closed casket. But the deed was done. I was left an only child, and a few days later we took to scouring her house and doing an inventory on her belongings. It was an all-around unpleasant experience on many levels. It felt so wrong to go through things like that, but with her only living relatives being my father and I, we inherited her house and possessions. We decided we didn't need them, so we'd sell almost everything. The plan was to only keep some of Sarah's stuff as mementos, things like pictures and whatnot. I went along with Dad to help, and we went room by room, cataloging items one by one. Given the small size of the house, it went pretty fast, but we started late into the day, and so we wouldn't be able to finish by nightfall. And one of the detectives wants to drop by later. Says he has some more investigating to do, my dad said as we were getting ready to leave. He asked for somebody to stay here tonight, but work won't allow me. Could you do it, champ? Sure, I mumbled, not in the least thrilled about the prospect. Dad packed a small box of trinkets in his trunk, and off he went home. The only room we hadn't gone into was the basement, and I wasn't about to do it by myself. The wooden door leading into it was wide open, charred by the fire and black with soot. The basement itself was in a similar condition, ravaged by the fire and by the firemen's attempts to put it out. It unnerved me to no end, so I dragged a chair out on the front porch and spent the evening there. I smoked half a pack of cigarettes and drank some old beer left behind in the fridge, all while the neighbors regarded me with curiosity. A few of them even approached me, giving me their condolences when they found out I was Sarah's younger brother. The detective finally arrived at sundown, pulling onto the street in an old beater car. He looked like your average guy when he stepped out, dressed in a cheap suit and a loose coat hanging on his shoulders. "Hello, I'm Detective Marcus," he introduced himself. "Clancy. Nice to meet you, Detective." "Likewise. I'd offer you a beer, but I assume you can't drink on duty." Might as well," Marcus said with a shrug of his shoulders. "I'm off the clock and I'll be here all night." That took me by surprise, but who was I to argue with the man? I fetched him a chair and a beer, so he sat down and lit up a cigarette as well. We had some admittedly awkward small talk, but the subject quickly moved to Sarah and her death. Marcus asked the usual questions. Was she depressed? Did she go out, or was she a shut-in? Did she have any friends or romantic partners he could question? All perfectly reasonable questions meant to dig up new leads, but I was the wrong person to try and answer them. I wasn't particularly close to Sarah, so I didn't know most of the answers that Marcus wanted. "Oh, don't worry about it, I get it," he reassured me. "I don't speak much with my old man, for example. Couldn't tell you his birthday if you put a gun to my head, let alone what he's up to these days. It's just, I never imagined she'd go like this, you know? I'd have made an effort if I knew. Don't beat yourself up over it, kid. What's done is done. It was getting late and darkness settled, so we went inside. I led Marcus into the living room and he shared some of the case details with me after we made ourselves comfortable. The reason I wanted to stay in the house overnight is this. As he spoke, he pulled out a smartphone and browsed some files on it. I'll warn you, they're pretty disturbing. If you want me to stop at any moment, just say so. He pressed play on an audio file, then laid the phone down on the small table between us. We both leaned in as Sarah's voice resounded from the speakers. I'll do my best to write down what she said from memory, as I don't have access to the recordings. Recording 1. Is this app working? Test. Oh, okay. Well, my name is Sarah. I moved into this house 2 days ago, and I heard some strange noises last night from the basement. I'm kind of paranoid right now, 'cause I live here alone. So I'll leave my phone out to record them and hopefully find what's up. Recording 2. Some breathing is heard in the background and the phone gets set down. Footsteps walk away from the microphone, then it's quiet for a long time. Marcus skips through most of the recording, as it is nearly 9 hours long. About 2 hours in, around midnight, the microphone catches a distant crash. Some skittering follows, sounding like a cat running around on bathroom tiles. It goes on for a few hours, with long pauses between bouts. Hello? A deep voice calls out weakly. What the hell? I let out. Marcus paused the recording and looked at me. You want me to stop it? He asked. I contemplated his offer. On one hand, whatever followed had the potential to traumatize me for life, but on the other hand, the sheer curiosity would eat me up alive if I didn't find out more. So I gave in and told him to let it play. Hello? The voice calls again, this time sounding more human. Is anyone there? No one answers it. The voice falls silent and the skittering carries it away from the microphone. No more sounds are heard that night. Recording 3. What the hell? What the hell? I knew it. Someone's living in my basement. Recording 4. Okay, I calmed down a bit. I was terrified after I listened to that last recording, so I ran out of the house and called the cops. A squad car came after about a half an hour. The bastards took their sweet time, but I showed them the recording. I went back inside accompanied by a cop, and we checked out the basement. No one was there. We turned the place inside out, we checked everything, but the room is small. No windows, no exits, and no place for someone to hide. The cops think that it was an intruder that broke in, but they couldn't find any signs of it. They said they'll patrol the neighborhood at night and keep on the lookout for any suspicious activity. One of them also asked me to keep recording, just in case. Recording 5. Okay, here goes. I'll leave the phone out tonight as well. A cop car just passed on the street, so I feel a bit safer. The sound of the phone being placed down is heard, and Sarah's footsteps follow. She leaves, and the recording is silent for a few hours. Marcus skips ahead through it until another distant crash is caught. The skittering returns, stopping a few feet away from the microphone. Hello? The voice calls out. Is anyone there? It sounds more feminine than last time. Still inhuman. Sort of like an artificially generated voice. but verging on crossing the uncanny valley into natural-sounding territory. It calls out a few more times over the span of a few hours, sounding more and more like a woman. When it becomes apparent that no one will answer its calls, the voice stops. The skittering takes it away from the microphone, and the rest of the recording is silent. "This is getting all kinds of freaky," I mumbled. "I know," Marcus admitted. "Never seen anything like it before. Do you recognize the voice by any chance?" "Not a clue," I admitted. "It doesn't sound familiar." "I was afraid that would be the case," Marcus said with a sigh. Sarah confirms a possible identity to the voice in a later recording, but I wanted to double check. "Then maybe show it to Dad?" I provided a solution. He was closer with Sarah than me. He might have an idea. Marcus fell silent for a moment. He joined his hands beneath his chin and leaned forward, propping his elbows up on the table. The look in his eyes turned grim and worried. "I'm sorry, Sonny," he said out of the blue. "For all you've heard so far, and for all that's to follow, but I'm glad it's not your father that decided to stay. These recordings might just break him." "What?" I asked, dumbfounded. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It will all make sense if you just keep listening," Marcus answered. The change in his demeanor was strange, and the night took an unnerving turn. I should have backed out. I should have kicked him out. I should have done a lot of those things differently. But my curiosity mounted to levels beyond my ability to rein it in, so I proceeded to listen further. Recording 6. "What the hell? That was Mom." Sarah cries into the microphone for a few minutes before the recording ends. Recording 7. I'm not going to call the cops anymore. That was Mom calling out. I want to talk to her. She's been gone for so long." Recording 8. "Okay, I've calmed down a bit, I hope. I'll wait here tonight." The recording is silent for a long time. It turns off abruptly after about an hour and a half. "Do you know anything about Sarah's mother?" Marcus asked me. I jumped back in my chair at the sudden interjection, completely absorbed by my thoughts. "Not really," I admitted. "She died before I was born. It was why Dad remarried." Marcus gave me a thoughtful nod on his head in answer, and he played the next recording. Recording 9. "It's back. I'll start another recording." The scurrying returns. Sarah's breathing is audible in the background, and it gets faster as the sound approaches her. A chair creaks, presumably as she gets up, and her footsteps join the skittering in the background. "Hello?" The same woman's voice from the previous recording calls out. "Who are you?" "Who are you?" The voice repeats Sarah's words back to her. "Mom?" Sarah cries out in a trembling voice. "Mom?" The voice repeats her words again. "Who the hell are you? How do you have my mother's voice?" "Who are you?" The voice repeats. Footsteps resound again. Approaching the voice as it says the same line over and over. "Answer me," Sarah demands. Knocking is heard, as if someone bashes a door with their fist. "Answer me," the voice coos. "What do you want?" The voice lets out a few garbled words, but they're unintelligible. Its pitch and intonation adjust before it speaks again. "Sarah, my dear, is that you?" I was left stupefied. The uncanny valley was finally crossed, and the voice sounded decidedly human for the first time. It held none of the animalistic traits from before. The subtle anger and malice in it was gone, replaced by a deep sense of compassion and worry. "I haven't seen you in so long," the voice continued. Sarah weeps silently in the background, but she doesn't answer the voice again. It, however, keeps calling out. I've missed you, my dear." Footsteps sound out as Sarah backs away, and the voice grows distant. It calls out over and over again, but the facade cracks. It can't maintain its grasp on the charade for long, and it devolves back into the uncanny valley slowly. The footsteps pick up speed until they turn into a run. After a few seconds, the voice becomes inaudible. A door is opened and closed shut with force, and Sarah starts crying uncontrollably. The recording stops. "The recordings are time-stamped," Marcus said. After this one ended, Sarah didn't make another one for a few days. Considering what I'd just heard, I didn't know what to answer. I kept silent, mulling over my own thoughts and feelings on the matter. As intriguing as the situation was, I mostly felt horrified and sorry for Sarah. I couldn't even begin to imagine what must have gone through her head after living through that. "Why are you showing me all of this?" I asked Marcus after a while. "If you really are a detective and part of the police force, you'd lock stuff like this away behind the 10 locks and keys." Marcus leaned back in his own chair, thinking my question over. He pulled out his crumpled up pack of cigarettes and retrieved one from it. I pushed the ashtray closer to his side of the table and he lit it up. And he bellowed out a cloud of white smoke. "All in due time," he answered. His eyes scanned me in a fashion completely different from before, with a cold and calculated look behind them. "What do you think so far?" I don't know. What the hell is going on?" "Answer me, Clancy, and be honest," he demanded. "Whether or not I'll show you more depends on it." I racked my brain, but I was truly and utterly stumped. The situation devolved too fast for me to keep up, and I didn't know what to think anymore. But I could tell that wasn't the answer that Marcus wanted. "It's, I don't know, a ghost? A demon? A skinwalker?" I hazarded a guess. Marcus seemed surprised by that. He pushed the cigarette away from his face, letting out another lungful of smoke. "And do you believe that?" he asked bluntly. "That it could be something supernatural?" "And what the fuck else could it be?" I answered his question with another. "What do you think it is?" "What I think is irrelevant. I want to know what you believe." "That's what I believe," I answered. I didn't know Sarah well, but she wouldn't fake something like this, so either she was haunted by something or you're messing with me. "That's the correct answer," Marcus said with a satisfied smirk. He put out the cigarette in the ashtray and leaned over the phone, placing a finger over its screen. "So how about it? Do you want to hear more?" "Why would I want that?" "Do you or do you not, Clancy? No hard feelings either way. I can't force you to listen." Yeah, start the next one." I don't know for sure why I decided that. We could sit here all day while I blame curiosity or, more likely, stupidity, but those answers would be half-truths at best. It didn't feel like a want at the time. It felt like a need. I needed to go through with it. I needed to hear all of it. The reasons I felt that way didn't matter at that moment. "I have a good feeling about you, kid," Marcus mumbled as his fingers tapped the screen and started the next recording. Recording 10. I don't know what to do anymore. It's driving me nuts. Whoever's messing with me comes back every night. I hear them even now. The microphone picks up footsteps, and a door creaks open slowly. Faint mumbling comes from the distance, accompanied by the familiar skittering. It pauses for a brief moment before it speaks up. "Sarah, my dear," the voice calls out, not entirely human. "Please, The door closes shut with a loud thud, and Sarah retreats back into the room. I tried a lot of things over the past few days. It calls from the basement, so I got locks and put them on the door. They're untouched, so whoever it is isn't coming from outside of the house. It hides in there somewhere. I called the cops again while the thing was still here, but it left when the cops arrived. The 2 officers asked me to unlock the door and they checked the basement again, but lo and behold, it's as empty as last time. And I'm not sure what they think of me. Maybe they suspect I'm fucking with them, so I can't rely on their help. I even told Amy about the thing and showed her the recording, so she slept over yesterday. The thing somehow knew I wasn't alone because it didn't make a peep the entire night. I'm not sure if Amy believes me or not anymore. Hell, I wouldn't believe me if I were her. But she offered a solution. Get a roommate or get a boyfriend. Someone to live with me. It could work, but I don't know anymore. "Do you know this Amy?" Marcus asked as the recording ended. I think Sarah mentioned her a few times, but I never met her. I looked over my shoulder as I answered, at the corridor leading to the kitchen. The basement door was on one of the walls there, and I could see the locks mentioned in the recording. They hung open on the door, but they were still intact. Marcus snapped his fingers to get my clearly distracted attention. Then he pointed down at the phone. "Want to keep going?" he asked once more. "Yeah." "Before I hit play, I want to ask you something again. Do you by chance suffer any mental trauma? As a child or even recently? Something that shook you to your core?" I raised an eyebrow at the strange question. "No. Why?" "You're taking all of this surprisingly well. Your mental fortitude is pretty high," Marcus answered. "That's sometimes a sign of... Never mind." He hit play before I could pry him for more details, so I fell silent to not miss it. But I made up my mind. When it was over, Marcus would have a lot more answering to do. Recording 11. I've tried my best to ignore it. I slept at friends' houses some nights, but that's getting harder to pull off. I tried looking for roommates, but no one wants to share a small house with this stupid pandemic around. And my search for a boyfriend is just as fruitless. I'm getting a bit old for the dating scene. I'll keep at it, but from the looks of things, everyone's mostly down to fucks, and not much else. I don't want to resort to frequent one-night stands. The police still answer my calls, thankfully, but they're not doing much. Even their patrols are getting less and less frequent. I'm at a total loss here, and I've considered selling the house and moving, but I can't afford that. Dad might be my last resort. Maybe I can move in with him and his wife and son. We're not exactly friends, though, so who knows? And I can't risk telling them. There's no chance in hell they'll take me in if they think I'm crazy. Hearing her opinion of me and Mom, it stung. Sure, we weren't more than acquaintances, but we weren't horrible people. We would have taken Sarah in if she had reached out to us, so to know that her salvation was so close, kept at bay by only this superficial assessment of us, it sucked, plain and simple. And if she would have showed us the recordings, we might have even believed her, especially Dad. Play the next one. I demanded before Marcus had a chance to say anything. You sure? You sound a bit riled up. Maybe play it. Marcus sighed deeply, but he did as he was told. Recording 12. It's still here. It won't go the fuck away. I haven't talked to it in almost a month now, but it's still here. It's going to drive me insane for real. I can't take it anymore. I'll confront it again tonight. Maybe I can find out what the fuck it wants, or get some answers. Recording 13. The recording starts and it is quiet save for static for a few moments. Sarah takes a deep breath and a barely audible step. Are you there? The skittering returns, coming closer to the microphone than ever before. It sounds more frantic than usual. Of course, my dear, the voice says sweetly. I'm always here. You stop that, you hear me? Stop using her voice. Sarah, I said stop. I know you're not her. The voice coughs loudly. It changes as it does, slowly morphing and growing deeper. When it stops, it sounds male. Sarah, honey. I paused hearing that. It was Dad's voice, no doubt about it. Although it sounded ever so slightly off, I could recognize it. Up to that point, my running theory was that the thing could mimic the dead, but Dad is still very much alive, so that threw my theory under the bus. I didn't know what to believe anymore. What do you want? I just want to see you. Open the door. Sarah backs away as her breathing grows faster. Please, honey, the voice begs again. It's dark down here. Shut up! Sarah runs away from the door as the voice calls continue in the background. That was your father, correct? Marcus asked when the recording ended. Yeah. And what does that tell us? I pondered the question for a moment. It's not a skinwalker like I first thought. I don't know much about them, but skinwalkers need to kill their victims to copy them, right? Not necessarily, Marcus answered. But they do need to hear the voice they're trying to copy. And anyways, a skinwalker could have broken down the door. So it's something else, I deducted. But what? I'm not sure yet. He went to play the next recording, but I stopped him. Where do you know so much about skinwalkers from? Marcus chuckled dryly. All in due time, Clancy. We still have a few recordings to go through. He hit play on the next recording, so we listened. Recording 14. It's not just Mom and Dad anymore. The damn thing has so many voices now. Amy, my ex-boyfriend Clint, random voices I can't place. Hell, it even used the voices of those 2 police officers that went down in the basement looking for it. It keeps calling for me, pleading and begging, feigning confusion, asking to be let out, but I won't do it. I won't open that damn door ever again. Fuck whatever I keep down there. It can have my stuff for all I care. I'm tired. I can't sleep because of it. It's getting so hard to do anything, I swear. Today I almost got fired for mixing up customers' orders for the 12th time. I nearly snapped at the manager, but I stopped at the last second and apologized. Some coworkers noticed I'm acting off and asked me about it, but I can't tell them. They'll think I'm crazy. Hell, I'm starting to think that I might be crazy myself. Recording 15. Sis? That's as far as I got into that particular recording. I slapped my hand over the phone with enough force to send cracks into the glass surface of the table. Marcus jumped back in his chair, taken by surprise. What the hell? I let out. That's my fucking voice. I knew this one would get to you, Marcus answered with a half grin. Or, well, get to you more than the others. I never visited Sarah here, I stressed. It couldn't have heard my voice, so how the fuck did it copy me? Think, Clancy. Did it ever hear Sarah's dead mother? Marcus answered my question with another. For how long has she been dead? 20 years, I said as I finally understood. So what does that tell you? It doesn't need to hear people's voices. Correct, Marcus said, satisfied by my breakthrough. So what, it can read minds? Maybe, Marcus said, scratching his chin. At the very least, it can form a connection with people. But until we catch it and see it for ourselves, I can't say for certain. Catch it, I echoed his words. Is that what this is all about? You want to catch it? Marcus wiped his smirk off his face and looked at me intently. Yes, Clancy. Either catch it or kill it, and solve your sister's case. So, what are you? But Marcus didn't let me finish. He pushed my hands away from the phone screen and hit play on the recording, interrupting me. All in due time, he repeated once more. Sis, are you there? It repeats in my own voice. It's been some time since Sarah's first recording of the mysterious voice, and it sounds thoroughly human at this point. No more cracks in its facade can be gleamed. Listen to me and listen well. I won't put up with this anymore. You have tonight to leave my house and leave me the fuck alone. I'll go to bed, I'll plug in some headphones, and I'll ignore you. If I hear you again tomorrow night, you can bet your ass I'll come down there and end you. Whoever or whatever you are. Understood? She sounds different somehow. Worried, tired, manic. Please, sis, for fuck's sake, open up the door and let me out. And why would I do that? How'd you get down there anyway? I don't know. I can't remember, but it's scary down here. Let me out, please. It copies your mannerisms well. It's spot on, actually. Marcus interrupted. It does, I admitted, feeling the color in my face draining little by little as I listened. Given enough time to learn, that thing could be a top predator. And let me guess, you can't let that happen. We can't let that happen, Marcus corrected. All in due time, I replied and pushed play on the recording. Sarah doesn't say anything else. Her footsteps carry her away from the basement door and the voice pleads in the background. It shifts back and forth between different people, quick and almost seamless. For short periods of time between the adjustments, glimpses of the animalistic nature make it through. The recording ends after Sarah closes the door to her bedroom. Recording 16. Okay, so I can't get a firearm, I don't have the money for them, and I don't even know how to handle one anyway. Fuck me. Gasoline's getting pretty expensive too, but I could afford a canister worth a few gallons and a box of matches. The plan is simple. I'll fuck that thing up if I hear it again tonight. I'll pour gasoline into the basement through the crack beneath the door and I'll light it on fire from up here. Fuck the house, fuck the authorities, fuck the repercussions. I can't let it live. I don't care if I end up in prison or a loony bin, so long as it dies here. My God, Sarah, I mumbled as the recording ended. Hearing her in that state of mind broke my heart. No one deserves to go through what she did, and the fact that we didn't help her sooner and that none of us made an effort to be in her life, it ate me up inside. We could have made a difference. I could have made a difference. Maybe then this tragedy would have had a better ending. There's only one more to go, Marcus said. He leaned over the table and slapped a hand down on my shoulder, giving me a tight squeeze. I nodded my head as I felt tears forming at the corners of my eyes, and signaled for him to play it. Recording 17. The fucker's still here. I warned it. I tried to be nice, I really did. What more could anyone ask of me? A liquid sloshes around in the background, presumably the gasoline. Her breathing is strained and close to the microphone. Metal rings out as it hits the floor. Sarah? It calls out, in the voice of her mother. I warned you. Something topples to the floor, and the sound of rushing liquid is heard. This is on you. It's not my fault. Sarah, please, the voice yells, more desperate than ever. What are you doing? What I said I would. You didn't listen. Why didn't you listen? Please, Sarah, you don't have to do this. Just let me out, please. Enough. Stop using her fucking voice. The thing falls silent. Sarah takes a deep breath, and the sound of gasoline pouring out of the canister dies down as it presumably runs out. Her clothes rustle as she searches her pockets, and she shakes the matchbox when she finds it. The sound of the matches jumping around inside is the only audible thing for a moment. You know what this is, don't you? She opens the box and fumbles around the matches for a moment. The voice doesn't answer her, but instead skitters away from the door frantically. Sarah takes one final breath, and the sound of a match being struck is heard loud and clear. Get fucked. The microphone doesn't pick up the lit match hitting the ground, but it picks up the gasoline igniting. Air rushes in as the flames begin to burn, and Sarah lets out a yelp. The voice begins to scream loudly, rapidly switching back and forth. Please! It lets out one final call, for the first time using Sarah's voice. The recording ended, leaving me wrapped up in a whirlwind of emotions. I was horrified, I was stupefied. I was strangely glad for it to be finally over. I was a mess, to put it bluntly. My body felt like it melted into the seat, but I quickly composed myself when I remembered that Marcus still had some questions to answer. Did Sarah kill it? Did we bury a monster instead of her? I asked in a single breath. I don't know, Marcus answered. It could very well be the case, but then where is she? Exactly. Plus a lot of other things don't line up. But to be fair, they didn't line up no matter which angle I went at it from. All that we know for certain right now is that someone died in a fire. So, monster hunter, huh? I asked after a few moments of heavy silence. Pretty much, Marcus answered. I'm the only one they call when shit gets spooky, and let me tell you, this shit is very fucking spooky. Okay, but all of this still doesn't answer the most important thing. Why show me this? Any of this? I asked. Marcus lit up another cigarette and leaned back in his chair. For the first time since he entered the house, he seemed truly comfortable, like he had nothing left to hide. We're always on the lookout for new recruits, so consider tonight your entry test, he admitted. You're a bit rough around the edges, but you seem like a decent candidate to me. Me? A monster hunter? You can't be serious. I shot back with disbelief. Marcus just shrugged his shoulders. You'll never know unless you try. I sure as shit didn't. Never expected to hunt the things that go bump the night before I tried. And what if I refuse? I asked. Will you kill me or erase my memory or something? At that, Marcus just laughed out loud. If you don't want to, you don't want to. Simple as. You can try to tell anyone, but who's going to believe you? I frowned, and Marcus caught on that he struck a nerve, so he composed himself and got up, taking the phone and stashing it into his pocket. Look, kid, it's like I told you time and time again tonight. I can't force you to do anything, but consider it, okay? As he said that, he pulled out a business card that he tossed onto the table in front of me. The world desperately needs more people like us. If there were more of us to go around, then maybe what happened here would have been stopped sooner. Yeah. It might be too late for your sister, but you could make the difference for someone else. If you make up your mind, doesn't matter if it's tomorrow or a year from now, give me a call. And take care. With that, Marcus left. I saw him to the door and closed it behind him. Then I went to crash into bed. My entire worldview was shattered tonight, and I decided to get some rest before I tried to make sense of the pieces. The following days were uneventful, but even so, the strain of that night hung over me. It permeated my thoughts at all times, permanently active in the background as it burrowed deeper and deeper. Dad returned, we finished cleaning the house, and he put it up for sale. But I couldn't focus on that. Not when every other thought I had was about those damn recordings. In the end, I had to stay over for a little while longer despite my constant complaints, but because of the slummy neighborhood and sketchy neighbors, Dad didn't want the house to go unoccupied. That's basically asking for thieves and punks to break in, he explained. And it's going to be hard to sell if it makes a squatter's nest here, so just hang on for a little while longer, okay? I wanted to fight him on the matter, to tell him he could stay over if he was that worried, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not when I knew the truth about what went down. He wouldn't be another death on my conscience, so I lived in the house for another week or so, helping out with renovations and whatnot, and truth be told, it wasn't all that bad. It was a little bit creepy, sure, but the freedom of living in my own was oddly pleasant. One evening, after he went home and I was left all alone, I heard a knock on the door. I slowly made my way over to answer, expecting either him or Marcus, but who I found on the other side left me terrified. It was Sarah. "Hey, Clancy," she greeted, sounding almost casual. "What? How?" I let out in a meek voice as my tears started to flow. "I have a lot of explaining to do, I know, but..." I didn't let her finish. I jumped her, latching my arms around her shoulders as I bawled my eyes out. She put her arms around me as well, and we hugged for minutes in the doorway as I cried. "What happened? Where were you?" I asked when we finally parted. We buried you. We thought you were dead." "I'm sorry," she answered. "A lot happened and I had some problems. I ended up running away to a friend for a while," and she sighed. "It's a long story, okay? And very crazy." "Tell me about it," I said, rubbing away the tears. "Call Dad and tell him to come over. He needs to know you're okay ASAP." "Actually, it'd be better if you do it. I don't want to give him a heart attack." "Good point," I admitted. "We kinda got rid of most of the furniture, but make yourself comfortable. I'll call him and join you." "Don't take long," she said, and went inside to find somewhere to sit. I watched her walk down the corridor towards the kitchen, pausing by the basement door. She looked at it for a long moment, then she continued on her way. I pulled out my phone and Marcus's card, unsure about what to do. The thing's facade was so good, damn near perfect. But as it spoke those last words, its voice cracked, just a little.